This podcast is sponsored by The Generational Algorithm by Francisco Castillo. Discover how to rewrite the emotional code passed down through generations and transform your life. Get your copy today on Amazon at the link in the description.
Coping with generational trauma, healing family and ancestral wounds. Explore how generational trauma affects families and discover practical coping methods to heal inherited emotional patterns and rewrite your story. Understanding and coping with generational trauma. You ever notice how sometimes patterns, emotions, or even behaviors seem to repeat in families, almost like they're passed down like heirlooms? That's the tricky world of generational trauma. Stuff that isn't just about our own experiences, but those of our parents, grandparents, and even beyond. Today, I want to talk about this in a way that feels like chatting with a friend, unpacking what generational trauma really means and how people cope with it. So, what is generational trauma? You might have heard it called intergenerational trauma, family trauma, transgenerational trauma, or ancestral trauma. Although the names vary a bit, they all point to the same idea: emotional wounds or scars that get carried through generations. Imagine your family's history as a kind of emotional thread. If one generation experiences deep pain or hardship, that thread weaves through the next, sometimes showing up in surprising ways. One common coping mechanism that shows up family to family is silence. A lot of families just don't talk about the difficult stuff. Maybe because it was too painful or stigmatized, or because they didn't know how. This silence itself can feel like a protective shield, but it also creates space for misunderstandings, anxiety, or unresolved fear to grow unchecked. Another way is through behaviors. Sometimes folks inherit coping styles even if they don't know the original trauma story. For example, hypervigilance, mistrust, or emotional detachment can become default responses. These are survival tactics passed down, not just learned from parenting, but embedded so deeply that they feel automatic. And then, of course, there's overcompensation in the form of perfectionism or control. Trying to fix things or protect future generations can sometimes turn into a burden itself. When parents, for instance, are determined that their kids never face the same struggles they did, they might unintentionally put pressure on them or avoid emotional risks altogether. But here's the thing. There are also ways people are breaking this cycle. Healing from inherited trauma doesn't mean just fixing yourself in isolation. It's often about understanding the wider family story and rewriting it with compassion and awareness. This process includes awareness, starting to recognize the patterns you're living with. Communication, opening up conversations about what was previously unspoken. Therapy and support. Sometimes professional help is key in unpacking years or even centuries of pain. Self-compassion, understanding that your emotional responses are valid and not just your problem. Creating new family narratives, establishing healthier traditions, values, and emotional habits. If this sounds like something you want to explore more deeply, I recommend checking out The Generational Algorithm, a fascinating book that gives practical tools for understanding and changing those inherited emotional patterns. It helps readers to rewrite their family's emotional story in a way that empowers rather than traps. You can buy it now on Amazon and start your journey toward healing from what sometimes feels like invisible but very real inherited trauma. To wrap this up, coping with intergenerational trauma is often a subtle, ongoing effort. It's about choosing to see beyond the immediate stress or emotions and connect to a bigger picture. Family trauma may shape us in many ways, but it doesn't have to define where we go from here. The more we talk about it and understand it, the more we can break those cycles for ourselves and the generations who come after us. Thanks for hanging out and sharing this moment of reflection. Remember, healing is a journey, not a race, and every step forward is a victory.